Hi,
Hey.
everybody.
It's 2023.
It is.
Are we feeling different?
I'm not sure if there's ever been a time in my life where I felt different at the beginning of January than I felt at the end of December. Although maybe there is a weird calm that comes, I would say, after the holidays and at the beginning of January. I'm not sure I feel like a different person, but I definitely feel slightly more relaxed after the rush of the holiday. And then obviously a little bit of a holiday break doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, I definitely slept a lot and read a lot of books during this break. So I definitely feel more rested, but still tired. I feel like I could still sleep for days, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, always. But always. Isn't that always the case?
I also feel like there's something about so we are located in Boston and, it's cold here. So if you also are somewhere where it's cold, there's something about the cold air that's really invigorating, dare I say, that like things just feel fresh.
It's true.
Right. So, but this time of year also makes me want to clean more. So I know some people are super into their like spring cleaning, but I'm always like, this is when I want to throw things out, get myself organized, do all the things.
Oh, until 10 o'clock last night, I was just bopping around the house, just organize. I mean, really, it was a lot of just making piles and moving piles, but it was a similar feeling of, okay, so maybe I do feel a little bit different after the holidays and moving into the new year, because I was doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you're like, this title said we're going to talk about organization, this is why we feel like this is a really, like, the beginning of the school year, and this time probably even more so than the beginning of the school year is a really excellent time to kind of take that energy of renewal and wanting to get organized and be on top of things. We're kind of like almost halfway done with the school year, and this is a great time to get your kiddos' stuff really organized and in order for you.
At the end of 2022, just a couple of weeks ago, in our last newsletter that went out of the calendar year, we talked a little bit about this, because I think sometimes parents and caregivers can feel like if you didn't get organized in September, or if you didn't get organized in August before the school year, there's this feeling of like it's too late, or you missed the mark a little bit, or you're behind. And I actually, I agree with Michelle. I think this is actually a really good time to kind of reset. I'm not the biggest fan. I know Michelle is maybe not either, of like New Year's resolutions, but I am a huge fan of resetting and getting organized for any time of the year. But I really do think, as far as school goes, as far as special education goes, as far as getting, like Michelle said, your kiddos' stuff organized for their programming, this is actually a really good time to do it. It's a halfway point. You've maybe had a second to breathe in the last couple of weeks. But heading into January, a little bit more organized maybe than you left November and December is a good way to feel good about the new year.
Yeah. And, one of the things that comes along with having kids in school, especially kids with disabilities, or who you're maybe nervous about or thinking about your child maybe needing some additional support in school, that comes with a lot of pieces of paper. There's a lot of paper. And even though I think one of the things that was almost, dare I say, good about 2020 and the shutdown is a lot of schools did start to utilize, like, it kind of really pushed schools to digitize more. But in the world of special ed, everything is still paper-based, even more so than, I'd say, real estate. Like, a lot of school districts still won't accept a digital signature for things,
right?
And you can buy a house with a digital signature. So we're like, a lot of schools are a little behind in that way. So you might be sitting on a ton of paper, or you might be in a situation where you're like, I feel like I should have received this piece of paper, but I don't know where it is. But then you're not really sure. So this time of year, halfway through the school year, especially when thinking about if your child's making progress or might need even if they're not due for an annual review, if maybe they need a progress check-in, the best way for you to know whether or not to request that kind of meeting is to have the papers in front of you in an organized sort of way so that you can understand what it's saying to you.
Back in September, we launched our organization binder, which actually you can still download right now from our website if you head to our website. And we have folks using that right now for those paper-based documents, like Michelle was saying. There's a section for IEPs and for progress reports. There's a section for evaluations. There's a phone log or a section for communication log. There's multiple different parts to it. But why something like that system is helpful is because everything is in one place. I think that another thing I have found this year working with all different families is that, like Michelle said, every school district is different. Some school districts are emailing you progress reports and draft IEPs and evaluations and so on and so forth. Some are snail mailing you consent forms and they're taking 3 or 4 days to get to your house. Some are putting IEPs in the actual postal mail as well, and you're not totally sure when you're going to get it or when it's going to arrive. So you might also have a combination of things in paper-based form, things in digital form. So sitting down with a table of contents, a list of things that you should have, and just seeing whether you have it in paper-based form or digitally and can print it out maybe is a good way to check, like Michelle said, and make sure you have all the information you need to, especially if you're heading into an IEP meeting or a progress check meeting, or maybe there's an evaluation meeting coming up. That's a really good way to know if you have everything, is to have a list in front of you that you can check.
And what are some of those things that folks should be, that we would recommend they should be putting together, putting into order, making sure that they have like right at their fingertips?
So when we sent out our last newsletter last month, the first thing that we recommended, and even before you get all of your papers together, I really do recommend doing this, is to check dates and timelines. Do you know when your kiddo's IEP expires, when their IEP meeting's coming up? Do you know when their evaluation is supposed to be complete or when their eligibility meeting is coming? Because that will help give you kind of a parameter when putting this together, is to know what we're planning for. Is this something that's going to be next week, the second or third week maybe of January, or do you have a little bit more time? Like we said, some sort of obvious things that you obviously want to include is at least the last couple of years of IEPs if your child is already on an IEP. The reason we say at least the last 2 or 3 years is because it can be really super helpful for comparison. If you have the IEP before or maybe 2 IEPs before, this helps you to know whether they are making progress towards their goals, whether their services have shifted and maybe you didn't realize it. It helps to see if their accommodations are still working from 2 years ago or 1 year ago, if there's something that needs to be changed there. It's just really good to have at least the year before, if not the 2 years before, for comparison. Any evaluations that have been completed, so every 3 years, maybe more, the school district is required to offer a reevaluation for your child if they're already on an IEP. And through that reevaluation, they might have updated cognitive testing. They might have or should have some updated academic testing, maybe speech and language, occupational therapy. This could be anywhere from 2 to 7 or 8 or more evaluations that were completed by specialists that you have reports for. So gathering all of those, putting them in one place is also super helpful, so that you have the most up-to-date data as well. Those are some of the more obvious things. Some things that we find that parents lose track of, or kind of don't think to include. Progress reports, Michelle already mention that you should be getting at least as often as your child is getting a report card. So for little ones like PKK, those might be less often, but once a child is in first grade, at least as often as they're getting a report card. I personally do recommend, and this can get a little bit overwhelming, so there are different ways to do this, and it's more on an individual basis, but I do recommend communication with school. So if you've been emailing with school, if you can print out those emails and put those in your binder to bring to IEP meetings as well, that can help to jog your memory around conversations that were had. That's another thing that we like to put in our section on a communication log, where you're keeping track of when you're calling school, when school is calling you, when you're emailing back and forth, whether it's with the special ed teacher or a principal or assistant principal or anyone on the school team. Another thing that sometimes parents don't think about or forget to include, but can be super helpful, is examples of work, student work. So if you get something home from your child's teacher that could be helpful for any number of different ways, it shows maybe one of their strengths, something that they've mastered, something that they're really good at, add a copy of that to a binder. If it's a piece of work that really shows what they struggle with, add that as well. If you can take a copy of it, or if you are able to keep the copy of it, because if you're in an IEP meeting, that might help to have something tangible to show where they might be having a little bit of difficulty.
So one of the things I wanted to put out there is sometimes parents and caregivers feel like keeping track of items almost feels like it's a gotcha for the school. And that's not what this is about. This is about you being an informed and prepared caregiver to be an active participant in your child's meeting. And by having these things, these documents, these artifacts at your fingertips to reference, to jog your memory, it's going to give you things to reference for your parent concern statement. It's going to give you things to talk about with your child for the vision statement, so that you and or your child are able to be active participants at your meeting. And this includes the communication logs. Know that the school staff also have some sort of communication log that they are also referencing when they're having conversations with you, because let's be honest, not everybody has a million and one things happening in their lives at all times. So we're not always remembering everything that we've talked about or gone over, and having that kind of log to just say, oh yeah, I remembered I asked you on this date for this. The teacher or therapist is going to be like, oh, sheesh, I forgot. Let me resend that. Let me send it to you. Right. So I think intentionality is everything, and there is no gotcha here. Like, if that's not your intention, right? So please don't feel like being a prepared caregiver is going to make the school feel edgy, or that it's going to create something adversarial, because it should not feel that way. It should be open and honest communication across both bridges here.
I think you bring up a really good point too, and something that I've seen honestly a lot. And it's when you enter into an IEP meeting, as prepared as you are, whether you're on the school side or that you're a parent or caregiver, those meetings can feel stressful. They can feel overwhelming. And so sometimes it's just having the documentation and information in front of you that just makes you feel more prepared, and it makes you feel a little bit less stressed. We always recommend, like Michelle said, that parents have their parent concern statement as part of that collection of documentation in their binder, something that they can read. You might have it in your head. You've maybe thought about it. You've definitely thought about it for probably weeks and months ahead of the meeting, what it is that you want to cover. But sometimes you can get into those meetings, and like I said, they can be really overwhelming. And when you're overwhelmed, you forget things. That's the reality of the situation. And so having everything in front of you, like Michelle said, isn't to show like, I gotcha. It's to say, I'm prepared. I have everything I need, but also I have this information to rely on in case I forget something that I want to talk about.
Absolutely.
And I think that's an important part too.
So I strongly recommend caregivers, if you have not already, use the link down in the show notes or on our website to go download your copy of our binder organization system. You can print it out at home, or you can even send it. We would recommend if you have like a Staples or something nearby. It has some pretty colors and stuff, and you can make it real durable. And if you are having difficulty accessing a printer, you can also set up a digital sort of binder, which can be helpful if you're somebody who really likes digital organization. You can also use this binder organization system to set yourself up digitally as well, if that works better for you. So yeah, go ahead.
And if you're listening to this and you're like, this is all too much. I'm trying to organize my house. I'm trying to put away Christmas presents. I'm trying to get everyone back to school so that I can take a breather. If this all feels a little bit overwhelming, pick one thing. You don't have to do all of these things at once. Pick one thing to do in the next couple of weeks at the beginning of January to set yourself up. And that one thing could be just reaching out to your child's special education teacher and asking when their annual review is. And that's something that's going to set you up for success. It's something that you can check off your list pretty quickly once you've done it. It might not feel overwhelming. So pick one thing that you can do in the next couple of weeks to help you get organized. It might be printing out one evaluation or one IEP. It might be just checking the due date. It doesn't have to be everything right now, all at once. But start with one and then see if that kind of prompts you over the next few weeks to get organized.
And I mean, I'll say that this is also a great time of year to schedule a 20-minute complimentary session with us. And that can be an organization session where you sit down with us over Zoom and you bring the things that you have and we just walk you through the different steps. Sometimes that can be really, really useful for just getting started and then giving you a couple of really good action steps to follow, whether that's continuing to work with us in some capacity or things for you to do on your own. Going forward so this is also a really good task to use that session for.
Awesome.
Yeah. So on that note, make sure you check out the show notes for the links to the binder organization system, the complimentary consultation, and you can always find us everywhere. Literally, our handle is empowered2advocate.com on the web. And then that is our handle on all the social medias. So we appreciate you being here. We wish you a happy, healthy, thriving 2023. And we're so grateful that you are here with us.
Can't wait to talk to you soon.